There's a lot of confusion, frankly, about the fraud detection features inside of upViral. I recently asked in the upViral group what people did in terms of turning on fraud detection. And from the answers, and I've also asked this in my Win Together program and my Win program, and they're equally confused. So there's a lot of people that don't quite understand how this works. Now, I'm going to tell you right up front, this process I'm going to walk you through is going to take a while, so be patient with me. There's a quick way of looking at this, and I think that it just makes more sense if you understand all of the different nuances. And I'm going to teach you a couple of things along the way, so hopefully you'll have a little bit of patience. First of all, inside the tool, on that first menu, there's fraud detection. And that's where we're going to focus a little bit of time in looking at that. But before we get there, we have to do some setup. Now, this particular campaign, I have one lead so far. And I want to walk you through, again, a couple of different things in this process. But let's scroll down we're on the Advanced Settings tab of this campaign. And we're going to get to the section that says Automatically Deactivate Fraudulent Leads. Right now, I have that turned off. Now, there's also this other setting called email verification. And if you don't see that, that's okay. I'm going to jump over into the general settings. I'm going to save this really fast. And if you go to integrations, other, then there's this thing called email list verify that you can set up. And I have that set up in Don't Steal That Code because it's not going to do you any good because I've run out of, it's a paid service and I've run out of leads, right? And I'm not using it anymore. But I also have found that they provide a whole lot of invalid results. And that's the reason I'm not using it. So the tool is specifically designed to, if somebody enters like joe@spam.com, it's going to flag that because spam.com or whatever isn't a valid email address. I quit using it because sometimes those are flagged as valid, and sometimes people that are valid get flagged as invalid. And I don't particularly care for the way upViral handles all that, so I just don't use it anymore, right? So if I go back to settings, notice I have that turned off. And again, you won't even see this unless you have that turned on. The biggest question is what to do with this checkbox, this switch, to turn it on or off. Let's look at the general settings. And something else, just as a side tip, is this whitelist. Your current IP address is 172.110.196, blah, 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 right? That's my IP. You can steal it if you want, but that's fine. If that doesn't show up, you could also go to whatismyip.com and it will show you. So there's that same number, right? So I'm just going to close that and go back over here. And right now I have it off. There is not checking that, right? So if I go over to this particular campaign, the one we were talking about before, Intro to upViral, I have one person registered, and that's me. And notice it flagged this IP address. So this may not work, but we'll test it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that, and I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to grab my referral. Notice that it currently says one visitor because I've done a little test, and actually that's over here. So I'm going to put in my information, fraud off 1 at planet5d.com. Now I think I actually made that as a 0. That looks like a 0. I'm going to make that be an O. And I'm going to do enter. Now it did not, at this point, flag me for that CAPTCHA, which is what we were talking about that whitelist thing for. So I'm going to close that because I don't need that anymore. I'm going to switch back over to upViral, and you're going to notice that this now says 1 subscriber for 20 points, right? And if I go back to fraud detection, let's see if that was marked as fraud. No. Let's go to leads. So fraud 1 off is not flagged. And notice that these two numbers are different, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to paste in that URL. And I'm going to do Planet Mitch fraud off 2 at planet5d.com. Now, here's the CAPTCHA, finally. You're seeing this because you've opted in too many times for your own campaign. Click here to whitelist your IP to avoid seeing CAPTCHAs when testing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to upViral, and I'm going to go back to close this. I'm going to go here, right? I'm going to click here. And I'm also going to put in that other thing that we had before, that really long one. I'm using a tool called Paste here on the Mac for multiple clipboards. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to come back over here to Firefox, and I'm just going to do a refresh and see if it lets me get past this. And it's not. So let me see if upViral actually registered me, right? So let's go to the campaign, and let's go to, I got too many campaigns, so I'm going to go to the dashboard, enter to upViral, fraud detection, nothing listed there, nothing under leads, because fraud off 2 didn't actually finish registering, right? Right. So I'm going to do Planet Mitch and fraud off 2, enter to win. And theoretically, I don't get that CAPTCHA, right? So that's what you want to do when you're doing testing. Now, upViral doesn't say anything. We think that I've been flagged as fraud at this point. So I'm going to refresh. There's fraud off 2. Notice that that is the same IP address. So I'm going to go to fraud detection. Now, what has it done? It has listed fraud off 1 and fraud off 2 as possible fraud. They're both marked as green in terms of the status. So not only the person that came in as the referee, but the referrer, fraud off 1, was flagged and fraud off 2 was flagged. Notice it says fraud referrals 1. If I come into the details, I'm going to open these in new tabs so I don't have to do a whole bunch of flipping around. Possible fraud. It says referrals. 1 referral is suspicious. If I scroll down, there's the referred leads, right? So if I can click on this, and it would take me to the people that are suspicious that were referred by fraud 1, which is good. It's good service, right? I don't need that window anymore. This one is fraud 2, also flagged as possible fraud. Total suspicious referrals so far, but this is 0. Okay, so we're getting some good information here. Now, what's really happened in terms of our database, right? We have fraud. Let me go to leads. We have 3 people registered. We have Planet Mitch, the original. There is nothing more than Planet Mitch. Then we have fraud 1 and fraud 2 with the switch turned off. Fraud 1 is earning points. Both of these are marked as possible fraud. There's no indication here of possible fraud, but if we go to fraud detection, both of those are listed. So what have we learned? We've learned something that I didn't show you because I don't have it set up, but fraud 1 and fraud 2, fraud off 1 and fraud off 2, would have been sent to my autoresponder. So those people would be in my autoresponder database. They're also earning points, potentially, if they're doing work, and they're listed as leads. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you one other thing, and then we're going to go turn that switch on, right? So that's the two things. The email has gone to the autoresponder, they're earning points. And the last question is whether or not that person, either of those people, can win a prize. Those are the three things I want to focus on. Now, one of the things in my book is that it's okay if fraud 1, fraud off 1, and fraud off 2 got sent to my autoresponder, because my autoresponder should flag invalid emails. So if that's an invalid email, if somebody is really cheating and trying to cheat the system, and let's suppose it, let's suppose it's not planet5d.com, which is my own domain, so I would get emails if that were processing properly. But let's suppose it's fraud off 1 at nodomain.com, something that's baddomain.com. Autoresponder is going to send an email to that email address, and it's going to bounce back and say, we don't know that email address. And so your autoresponder is going to, either on the first email or the second that you send, it's going to flag that as an invalid email address, and it's not going to charge you for it. So although sometimes we don't want those emails going over, if we really had our druthers, we wouldn't send that over there. But let's trust the autoresponder to flag that. Now, if you don't have one of the top domain, one of the top autoresponders, it may not flag that properly, and you may get charged for those fraudulent emails. I'm not going to try to judge and preach to you about that, all right? But now, we have 3 leads, right? We have 2 of them marked as fraud. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the setup, and I'm going to turn this on. Again, I'm going to leave this email verification thing off. Scroll to the bottom. I'm going to do save. So now fraud detection is, let me rephrase this, automatically deactivate fraudulent leads is on. We saw that people were marked as fraud, so fraud detection wasn't turned on and off. Fraud detection is always on. It's how you handle those leads. Oh, I was going to do one more thing. It's okay that that's turned on, because that's not going to impact this test. So the last test I want to do before I add new people is let's go to sweepstakes and let's pick winners. Now what I'm going to do is, I know there's 3 people in the database, right now. So I'm going to simplify this process. I'm going to say 3 winners. Now upViral should randomly select. If I only did 1, let me just do it. I'll show you 1. I'm going to do pick winners, and it's the first one, right? The first one. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to do that again. And it didn't pick one of the potential fraud leads, but eventually if I do this often enough, I know it'll do it. Because I've tested it. There it is. Fraud off 1. And again, this is based on points and all that other stuff. So what I typically do in order to test something like this is I'll actually put in 3 and see what upViral gives me. So it realized that I was trying to only pick people 1 time. Therefore, it gave me all 3. So if that flag is off and somebody is marked as green, then they can be selected as a winner. Now that's important. Keep your mind on that. So green means that the email's been sent to your autoresponder, they're eligible to earn points, and they're potentially eligible to win the prize. All right, so I just saved that setup, right? So that flag is now turned on, and I'm going to go back over to Firefox. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to do open new private window. So this is incognito and should avoid the cookie situation, right? And I'm going to go to my clipboard manager, and I'm going to put that same URL in again. I'm going to get to the lead page, and I'm going to put in Planet Mitch, and I'm going to do fraud, and I'm going to turn this, I'm going to say fraud on 3 at planet5d.com. I didn't get the CAPTCHA, which is good, right? So I go back to upViral, and I'm going to go to leads, and notice there are only 3 leads listed. even though we know that I just registered fraud on 3. So let's go to fraud detection, and we will now see fraud on 3 as marked as a red flag. Red flag says the lead is currently inactive. Activate the lead in order to send it to your campaign. Now, if it's red, that means, and you have to trust me on this, that it hasn't gone to your autoresponder. They can't earn points, and they can't win. So let's since we were in the sweepstakes just recently, let's just triple check that. We know there's 4 people now, right? Even though 3 show up on the list, I'm going to put in 4, and I'm going to do pick winners, and upViral only picks from the 3 that are active. If it's red, it's dead. They can't possibly win. Now, maybe you want that, right? But what you have to do, morally, legally, responsibly, is to go into fraud detection and analyze whether or not you think this person's really cheating. In this particular case, if I come in here, it says possible fraud detection. Total suspicious referrals is 0 because this person hasn't referred anybody yet. Has no visits, has no other points, but we have 1 point, right? So let's have some fun with this. Let's do copy link address, and let's go back over to Firefox, and let's do a new private window. Hopefully this works properly and takes me to the lead page. So now I'm going to enter Planet Mitch, and we're going to do fraud. I should do on, right? And we're going to do 4. Oops, on. I can't type it and talk. Fraud on 4. So switch is on, registered. Now let's go to upViral. So we used this referral you want. So let's see if we earn points for that. So I refreshed. Let me do that slowly. Refreshed. So they got 1 point for signing up, but there's no visitors and no subscribers. Okay? You with me? Now, I could still activate, I could make winner, I could blacklist, and I could delete. I'm not going to go through all of those things right this second, but let's go back here. So in the fraud detection, refresh, and I didn't need to refresh because it refreshed itself. There's fraud on 3 and fraud on 4 are black flagged, red flagged. Neither one of those are earning any points or eligible to win, right? Sweepstakes. How many do I want? I'm going to pick 5 because I know there's now 5 people in the database, but it only lists 3 because 2 of them are flagged. All right, so let's suppose now those people that are red aren't sent to your autoresponder, they aren't earning points, and they aren't going to win, right? We got that. So let's suppose that we decide that fraud on 3, is a valid person. Now let's go in and look again just for fun. It says possible fraud detection, 1 suspicious referral, which wasn't there before. View referrals, we can click that through, see that that's the one that came through, right? Going back, still no points or blah, 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 right? This is all empty. All right, so what happens if I go back to the fraud page and I do activate? Let's find out. So activate says this will activate this lead. Do you want to continue? I'm going to say OK. Now notice that fraud on 3, which is the one I just activated, now has a green status. They're activated and sent to your campaign. So let's go to leads. Notice there's fraud on 3. Let's click on it, and it still says possible fraud. View referrals, but there's nothing listed down here, right? Notice they didn't get any points for that visit or that refer, right? Let's go back over to Firefox and let's close that. Let's see what happens. I think I can do fraud private window. Da, 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 da. So I'm going to do, let's see if I still have that link right. Do that link again. So this is Planet Mitch. and we're going to do fraud on 5, right? With me? I'm going to do at p5t.com, shortcut, enter to win. Let's come over here, and now we should have visitors and other or subscribers, right? Because we've turned that on. Why is there no subscribers? Wasn't that the URL that I used? Let me just paste it in here. 889. I thought we should have a subscriber. Total suspicious. Oh, of course we don't have a subscriber, Mitch. Right? Why don't we have a subscriber? Because with that flag, this flag over here, turned on, fraud on 5 is now listed as fraud with a red bullet. So what happens if I activate? Do those points, excuse me, do those points come through? I'm going to do activate. Does fraud on 3 get credit for those? Subscribers, bingo, there it is. So yes, they go back and get those points. Good for us. Good for upViral. Now, there are no points because I don't have points allocated for visits. Right? All right. So now let's go back to leads. And we see that fraud on 3, fraud on 5, because those are valid. Right? We green lighted them, are listed as leads. Can they be winners now? So let's go to sweepstakes. And let's put in 6. Just for fun. So there's 3 and there's 5. So yes, they now can be a winner if they're green. Earning points if they're green. If they're red, they're dead. So what does that mean for you? Right? So we've identified that green is okay, right? They're still showing up on fraud detection, so that you have a record that you marked them as green, or they came through when the flag was set. But we also have one person that's still marked as red. And let's suppose that we think that that person's valid, right? I clicked activate. I didn't want to do that. But if they're valid, we should activate them, because we know they're not going to win, right? They can't win the prizes. They don't even show up in the list. I'm going to do one more thing before I do that. I'm going to go to leads. So we have one person that's red and everybody else is green, right? Which person is red? I want to make sure fraud on 4 is red. So I'm going to go leads. I'm going to do export leads. And I'm going to open that CSV inside of numbers on my Mac. And I'm going to make it be full page. I'm going to do this so you can see it. I'm going to bump it up to 300%. So there's 5, there's 3, there's 2, there's 1, there's Planet Mitch at giveawayrocket.com because he rocks. And there's no 4. So people who are red don't win. They aren't leads, they don't get sent to your autoresponder, they don't earn points, and they don't show up in the export. And maybe that's what you want, but I want you to be sure that you understand all of the ramifications of red versus green inside of fraud detection. Whew. I hope that makes a lot of sense. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. Somebody asked me in the live demo when I did this in Win Together, which is a great program if you're not in it, by the way. If you're on the fraud detection screen, what happens if you click this delete? What happens? What do you think is going to happen when I click that delete? If I click it, it says this will delete this lead. This will delete this lead. Do you want to continue? Okay. That lead is going to go goodbye, goodbye. Now, I wish they would put the actual lead email address or something in there. All right, so that's fraud 3. Let's just do fraud 5 because that was the last one that came in. And delete fraud 5. I'm going to say OK. Comes off of this list. Comes off of leads too. He's no longer a lead. He's gone. He, she, it is gone. If I were to do the export, you would see that fraud 5 is not in the export. So that's a serious ramification. You've removed that person from the campaign. What are the other options here? There's blacklist. Blacklist means that that person, excuse me, will go into settings, general settings. There's this list of people that are naughty naughties. The bad boys, the bad girls. You can put IP addresses, you can put email addresses in there. Notice the whitelist is only IP whitelist. My friend Brent pointed that out the other day. So, indeed, you can put somebody on that blacklist. So if I were to say this person, fraud 4, is a naughty naughty, my choices are to blacklist by email, blacklist by IP address, and the last one's a cool one because you can do both, IP and email. So if I do that, then fraud on 4 is going to show up in that blacklist. Do they come off the list? No. Still on the list, but they're still red. Right? Now I could blacklist somebody that's green if I wanted to. So let's just for sure go over to the general settings and see the blacklist. And if I scroll down to the bottom, there's fraud on 4, naughty boy. And there's my IP address. Right? So that's what those things are and what they mean to you. If you have any questions, make sure you feel free. Don't be shy, because this is a complicated question. But make sure you understand how all of this stuff works. Fraud detection is important, especially when it comes to picking winners. I had a campaign, for example, where a gentleman had 1,000 referred leads. 1,000 referred leads. Ding, ding, ding. Good for him. upViral flagged a good chunk of those. I think it was 275 or something as possible fraud. What I did was I emailed that gentleman and I said, look, I'm concerned because you're bringing in a lot of leads. Are you a real person or are you trying to cheat? And it turns out his response was that I am in college and I was handing out flyers to people in my dorm, cheated, used the copy machine, asking them to sign up for the contest, and it had my referral link on it. And so there are a whole bunch of people that are in my dorm using my same IP address, because dorms often have the same IP, even though there might be multiple routers in the building. They're all pointing to one that probably goes out. And so he had a whole bunch of kids that were marked as fraud. It gets rather complicated if you have a large campaign, because that would mean that not only was he listed here, but 275 other people were listed here, because if I had that switch turned on, they'd be marked as red and they couldn't win. None of them would be eligible to win, even though they were, in my mind, valid people. So this can be very complicated. If you have that switch turned to red, maybe that's what you want. Make sure that's what you want, because those people aren't going to be eligible to win. They're not going to show up in your autoresponder. They're not going to show up in export. They're not earning points like you potentially want them to be doing. And if they're coming in and checking their status, they're going to see their status, but they're not going to have any points, so they're going to write you an email. So if you turn that switch on, please, 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 make sure you understand the ramifications of that switch and what work you need to do to go possibly make sure that people that are working for you, working hard to earn points for you, are eligible to win the prize. And that means you have work to do. I, frankly, always leave that switch off. because I know how upViral works. I know that those people are going to be potentially eligible to win. So what do I do, by the way, when I do select winners? Let's say I'm going to select one, and let's just pretend, all right? So fraud on 3 shows up, right? Before I send an email to them, which is, again, why I never, ever send an automated email to winners, I click on fraud on, and I come in and I look at them, and I say, oh, it's possible fraud. They've sent some referred people in. Let's see if they worked on points. So I go ahead and look to see if they earned any points and blah, blah, blah. So I do that personal validation before I award that prize. I don't let upViral just ignore those people. You may want to do that. That's perfectly up to you. But I want you to understand that if they're marked as red, they can't possibly win. And therefore, it's up to you to go through that process and decide whether or not you want people earning points, going over to blah, 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 all those things. Make sure you understand why that switch is either on or off and what that means to your contest. And if that gentleman had 1,000 referrals and had not been picked, he actually was picked for one of the prizes, he would have potentially been really mad at me if he could have found out that he was not eligible even though he did all that work. He'd be mad, and he could sue me. So please make sure you understand the ramifications of that fraud detection being on or off. I am Planet Mitch from giveawayrocket.com. If you want to build a better campaign, come talk to me, find out how to get involved in the Win program and the Win Together program. Learn all of this stuff. There's so much to learn in running a good contest and doing it the right way. You should be involved. Come see me. You can look me up at facebook.com/planetmitch or email me at planetmitch@giveawayrocket.com or just scream at me really loudly because I'll hear you because I have big ears. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope that helps. We'll talk to you again soon.